Good evening and welcome to Technology in the Classroom. I'm Michael Skinner, Marketing Manager for Education Products for Yamaha Corporation of America. And with me tonight is Dr. Brian Moore, Associate Professor of Music Education here at University of Nebraska. This video conference is the first in a series of co-sponsored by Music Educators National Conference, highlighting technology in the music classroom. Tonight we'll take a look at Music in Education, the technology-assisted classroom by Yamaha, and see how this system can be used to teach the national standards. MIE is a computer-assisted general music classroom, providing hands-on experience and success for all students, regardless of proficiency level. Through the sequential, non-graded, concept-based curriculum, students listen, discuss, make, and create music. The use of a teacher-designed keyboard provides students with a hands-on experience every time they enter the classroom. Sophisticated Macintosh-based software through one computer manages lesson materials, controls all keyboards, and instantly accesses the interactive listening. Quizzes accompany each module of instruction and are administered by the teacher through the use of the computer. All attendance, records, grades, as well as additional material is stored on the computer hard drive and is printable. There are 1,200 schools and over 2 million students using MIE in the U.S. and in Canada. The National Standards for Music in the Arts was developed by the Consortium of National Arts Education Associates and clearly defined both the place of technology and learning as well as the content standards for student achievement. In this context and issues section of this book, the authors note, quote, "Other use of technology in arts instruction is meaningful only to the degree that it contributes to the competence, and that competence comes through instruction and study. Used appropriately, technology can extend the reach of both the art and the learner." End of quote. What you will see tonight is that blend between instruction and study that results in real learning. We'd like to show you 3 different classroom situations where teachers are using technology, in this case music and education, to teach the national standards. After the presentations, we'll field your telephone and email questions regarding music and education or technology in the classroom in general. The telephone number is 800-423-0619. And our email address here is bmore@unl.unl.edu. During each teaching demonstration, write down your questions so you'll be ready for them when we want you to call in. Before we see them, let's first review each content standard. If you don't have a copy handy, you may want to jot them down. They are, number 1, singing alone and with others, a varied repertoire of music. Number 2, performing on instruments alone and with others, a varied repertoire of music. Number 3, improvising melodies, variations, and accompaniments. Number 4, composing and arranging music within specified guidelines. Number 5, reading and notating music. Number 6, listening to, analyzing, and describing music. Number 7, evaluating music and music performances. Number 8, understanding relationships between music, the other arts, and disciplines outside the arts. And number 9, understanding music in relation to history and culture. Here we've only listed the content standards since the achievement standards will be different with each age group, and tonight you will see 3 different age groups. The first example is 2nd and 3rd grades in Phoenix, Arizona. This class is interesting, particularly because 100% of them use English as a second language. 100% of the students use English as a second language. The teacher is Lauren Altier, and this is her 3rd week of school with the students. After you view Lauren's class, Brian will take you through the technology she used to teach that class. All 3 examples you are about to see are rather lengthy. We wanted to show you a complete class for the continuity of that particular class. We did do some editing, but that was here to save time only. Here's Lauren Altier at Wilson Primary School teaching content standards 1 and 2, singing with others and performing with others on instruments, a varied repertoire of music.
Okay, we've been studying steady beat. Steady beat, that's correct. Partners on the left, raise your hand. Good job. Partners on the left, would you track, please? Partners on the right, will you play? Yeah. Partners on the right, put your fingers on the 2 blank key groups. Partner on the left, check. Is your partner ready? Yeah. Okay, singing and playing. Ready? I'm riding the new river train. Singing. I'm riding the new river train. Keep going. The same old train that brought me here is gonna carry me home again. Good. Switch. Ready, go. I'm riding the new river train. I'm riding the new river train. Keep singing. The same old train that brought me here is gonna carry me home again. Very good.
Very good.
Oh, there it is, telling you the same thing. All right. Now, we've talked about creating some of our own patterns before. Instead of just playing two black keys, left, right, raise your hand if you think of another pattern that we might be able to play. Jeremy.
3,
Okay, you'd like to use 3 black keys? Okay, then what?
2,
3, then 2, then what?
3,
Okay? Okay, let's try that pattern. Would everybody practice that one? 3, 2, 3, 2. And I like how Adriana has the 3 group in her left hand and the 2 group in her right hand. Is that the way the rest of you are doing it?
Yeah.
Let's try that. Make sure that the 3 group is in your left hand. And the 2 group is in your right hand. This one. Got it? Practice silently for a minute. Check your partner. If your partner doesn't have it, help him or her. Okay, let's hear it. Ready? 3, 2, 3, 2, 3, 2, 3, 2, and stop. Good. Let's do one more of these. Okay, Blanca.
2, 2, 3.
All right, let's do 2, 2, 3, 3, 3. Say it with me. 2, 2, 3, 3, 3. 2, 2, 3, 3, 3. 2, 2, 3, 3, 3. All right, could you use the 2 black key group that's the low one and the 3 black key group that's right next to it? Check your partner. Got it? I'd like to hear it. 1, 2, ready, go. 2, 2, 3, 3, 3. 2, 2, 3, 3, 3. 2, 2, 3, 3, 3. Good job. Let's try that with New River Train. Ready, go. 2, 2, 3, 3, 3. 2, 2, 3, 3, 3. 2, 2, 3, 3, 3. Your own creating, your own music making. You're making up ideas for yourselves that you can use later on and apply in different settings for creating music. Let's find the music for Now You Has Jazz. I'd like to thank the people who are finding it without talking about it. Open the music, and I'd like us to sing in track first with the partner who is on the right track first this time. Ready? Go!
Take some skins. Jazz begins. Take a bass. Steady pace. Take a bus.
Deep breath.
Run across.
Open your mouth.
Take a blue
threes? Your fours. And what are these? Fives, good. Could you hold your right hand up in the air, please? Wiggle 1, 2, 3. Very good. I'll play a pattern. I'd like you to sing it and air play it back to me. Play it up in the air back to me. Are you ready? Here we go. Your turn. Good. 1, 2, 1.
1, 2, 1.
1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3.
Hard one. 1, 2, 1.
1, 1, 2, 1.
Good job. 1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3, 3.
Good watching, good listening. Now would you take these 3 fingers and place them on high A, B, C on your keyboard. High A, B, C. Dum diddy dum dum. Use your thumb. Make sure that your thumb is working up here on this top key, right here. Put your thumb to work. A, B, and
C.
C. All right. I'm going to check on the monitor and see how we're doing. Hold down A. Good job. Joy, go up to the high A, please. Saul, A, not G. One more up. Maria, A, not C. Getting closer. Bobby and Johnny, find A. If we use our right hand, I think it'll be easier. Perch on top of the keys. Let's check it. Listen. 1, 1, 1. 1, 2, 1. You know what? I hear Adriana singing every pattern back to me. That's good. My turn again. 1, 1, 1.
1, 1, 1.
Good. 1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3.
1, 3, 2.
1, 3, 2.
3, 2, 1. Listen. Listen again. Good, listen. Oh, what was it? I'll play it. You tell me the finger numbers.
3,
3 and
2, 1.
okay, now I'll play it in rhythm and you play it back. My turn. Perch, please. Perch, please. 3, 2, 3, 1. All right, thank you. That's enough of that. Now you has jazz. I'll point up here and I'd like you to say the numbers and play them for me. Ready? Go. 1, 1, 1. Rest.
Rest, 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 rest. 1, 1, 1. Rest, 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 rest. 1, 1, 1.
Say the rest.
Rest, rest, rest,
Rest. 1, 1, 1.
rest, rest, rest,
Up we go. 2, 2, 2.
rest, rest, rest,
Rest. Now what?
3, 3, 3. Rest, 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 rest.
What?
3, 3, 3. Rest, 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 rest.
Now what?
1, 2, 2. Rest, 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 rest.
Okay, please look up here. Let's figure out why this was 3 and this was 2. Is this note in a space or on a line? This one right here. This one is in a space. I'd like to thank the people who are going to raise their hands. This one is in a space. So if this note is in a space, then this one is on a what, Fernando? On a line. Is this space note higher or lower than the line note? Raise your hand if you can tell me. Miguel.
Higher.
This one is higher. Okay? And we call this a space and we called it 3. So if this is 3 and this one is lower, what finger number will it be, Julio?
2.
Julio, 2 would be correct. Okay? Now let me ask you this. If this note is up, does this one step down or stay the same? If this one is up, does this step down or stay the same? What do you think, Corelli? This one and this one and this one stay the same, but how about these three? Are they lower or higher? They're lower, so do they step down or stay the same? They stay the same here, but from this one, do they step down or stay the same? Look, they step, say again.
Step down.
Correct, they step down. Okay, that's what I was after in the finger numbers. Now, I would like the partner on the left to play and the partner on the right to track, please. And then we'll switch. Would you check your partner and make sure he or she has the top three notes, A, B, and C. I see that Manuel is ready. Okay, I see that Blanca and Joanna are ready. I see that Joey is ready. I would like to hear the first note, please. Okay, check your work. You need to be on the top, what three notes?
Black. ABC.
The top three white keys, and they are what, everybody?
A, B, C.
Say them again.
A, B, C.
Okay, how do we find A, B, and C? Let's look up here and review. We just did an activity, didn't we, that had A, B, C. Right here, those are the three notes I'd like you to have. Luis, you are doing a good job of watching and paying attention. Okay, now I'd like to hear A. Ready? Play A. Just A. Go. Good. Now can I hear B? Good. Now can I hear C? Great. All right. Now can I hear 1? Oh, what is 1? Right. May I hear 2? And may I hear 3? Good. And you know what? Those of you who are tracking for your partner, you might have to move back a little bit because when you lean over, you're pushing down on your keys, and I know you don't mean to do that. All right, we are ready. Singing and playing. Here we go. Ready? Go.
Take some skins.
I'm sorry. My thumb hit the wrong thing. Go.
Take some skins. Jazz begins. Play the bass. Steady pace. Take the bus. Wonder runs. Take the
Okay. Now let's switch parts. We're only going to do that much. Switch parts. Other partner be on A, B, and C. You know what I think? I think we need to pick up the pace. Whoa! Here we go.
Take some skins. Jazz begins.
Watch this, Maria.
Take the bass.
3 notes there.
Steady pace.
Now up to 2.
Take the bus.
Up to 3.
The first aspect of this classroom to note is that the central role of the teacher. Lauren is front and center, and she is assisted by the technology. She moves around the classroom and helps students whenever it is needed. Now, standards 1 and 2 again focus on singing and performing. Now, these student activities are obviously oral in nature. Now, the design of the MIE keyboard enhances the ability of these students to be musically successful even only after 2 weeks of instruction. The use of the keyboard provides a stable tonal center for every child. You'll notice that there is a left speaker and a right speaker, each with their own separate volume control. With 2 students at a keyboard, it gives each student their own musical resource for pitch matching and singing. The split nature of the keyboard also now allows us to have each student have his or her own instrument. For standard number 2, performing, every child is engaged in playing an instrument for 100% of the instructional time. Now, if instruction is going to be effective, the teacher needs to be able to monitor and to evaluate what the students are doing. You'll remember about midway in this class, Lauren mentioned the term note monitor. Now, this is a specific screen on the computer which allowed her to see the keyboard activity of the entire class at once. We'd like to show you that screen.
What Lauren was able to see, what she was looking at, was the entire class of 30 students, 2 to a keyboard, and the name of the student appeared on the left-hand side of the screen. As they played on their student keyboard, whatever notes were being played also appeared, so that Lauren was able to monitor and to know exactly what each student was playing. Now, while the primary student activity was singing and playing, Lauren also had her students reading. Now, the use of the remote control allowed her to focus on issues that were instructional rather than issues of classroom management. It's this remote control that allowed her to control the sound of the entire classroom. She could turn her teacher keyboard on. At any point, she could pause it, replay it, and you'll notice there were a couple activities in which she went back and forth with the students playing and having them listen. And this same technique of using the remote control also works for all of the student keyboards, so she has tremendous power. She can focus on teaching.
The next example is a class of 5th graders at Pashaw Elementary School in Bradenton, Florida. The teacher is Shelby Fullerton. Shelby's lesson will teach content standards 3, 4, and 5, improvising variations and accompaniments, composing and arranging music with specified guidelines, and reading and notating music. Here's Shelby.
One way to do harmony is by singing a round, all right? So, I'm going to be part 2, you be part 1, and no matter what I do, you keep going. Go. Okay, now I need some brave people to sing the part with me. Those people with their hands up, I need 2 more. Good, you sing with me. The rest of the class will be part 1. Here we go. Part 1. Ready? Sing. Keep going. You've got your music open. I'm going to play one of the keyboard parts. It will either be keyboard part 1, 2, or 3. See if you can find which part I am playing. And you and your partner be able to tell me why you think it is part 1, or 2, or 3. All right, so right now your eyes should be on part 1, or part 2, or part 3. Okay, I'm going to play one of the parts. Ashley, which part is that? Part 1. Now, can you tell me why you thought it was part 1? What kind of sounds do you have there? Who can tell me what kind of note is not filled in, has a stem on it?
High,
It is high and low, but what makes it longer? Half notes, good. So this is a half note, this is a half note. Would you locate on your keyboard low G and high G? Those 2 sounds, low G and high G. Okay, as I point to it, would you play? 1, 2, ready, play. Good. Let me hear the difference between low, high, low, high. 1, 2, 1, 2. Ready? Count. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Would you check your partner for accuracy? Make sure they have 2 G's. 2 G's. Good. Play them all together. Let's jump. Follow me. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. Continue on your second page. Good. Let's see some happy faces, especially those people who can play that and sing the song at the same time. Would you clap that pattern? Ready? Go. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Count with your partner in the song and tell me how many measures of that pattern you have on part 3. How many measures of part 3 are there? Part 3. Count the measures. JW. 8. Does everybody agree? Yes. All right, this is page 1. Count them with me. 1 measure, 2 measures, 3 measures, 4 measures, and what's happening on page 2? 5, 6, 7, and 8. All right, you ready to play it for me? Okay. Look up. Left hand. Not a half note any longer, a half note 2/4, but who could change the rhythm and make it something different? It has to be the 5th. That's all I want you to use. But I want you to change the rhythm. I want you to vary it. Make it different. Okay? Now put on your headphones and try coming up with a different pattern. A different rhythm pattern. Okay, now I'm turning your speakers off. You're on split mode so that you hear just yourself. I'm going to see who can come up with the best rhythm change.
Please stop and listen now.
Okay, good. Who came up with one they want to share with the class? Billy, you're using the 5th and you're going to share this with us, all right? What you want to tell us first of all what you used? He said he reversed the pattern. Let's see if he really did. I bet he did. Very good. Very good reversal. Billy, how would we write that? How would we notate it? First of all, we got our F clef here. And we need to put our 4/4 time, right? Our meter signature. All right. Now, this is really tricky because he said he reversed the pattern so it should look reversed in the music, right? So, Billy, what should I put up? What kind of notes do I use? Quarter. All right. Play it one more time. It's got to look like what you play. Okay, now that's what it sounded like. Help us out, everybody. What would go next? Michael. What? Another quarter note. A 5th pattern, a fifth interval quarter notes. Great. Okay, Billy, we've got the first half of your measure. Now what would you put? Play it again. Okay, go back to G and D. All right, there you go. You just slipped off a little bit. Okay, play it again, Billy, and let's see what we're going to put right here in this spot, okay? Go. What would I put? If you reversed what's on that page, what would you need to use? Half notes. Good. Excellent. Okay, everybody play Billy's pattern. Now, don't forget your pattern, but play Billy's. Here we go. Like for you and your partner to choose an orchestra instrument. Pick whichever one you like best. All right? Put your keyboard in ensemble mode. Ensemble means that you're going to hear each other. All right? Pick your own instrument, and then I'm going to give you something to do with that instrument. Chad, what did you choose? Saxophone. Now, when you are choosing saxophone, make sure that since you're on the left side, you chose left saxophone. Is that what you did? Gina, what did you pick? Electric piano. Now, here's what you're going to do. You're going to use the key of G major. And your assignment is this. You are going to make a call and response with your partner.
Please stop and listen now.
Okay, who wants to share their call and response in G major? Julie and her partner. Okay, here comes the call. Julie, start over and put your thumb, make sure your thumb is right in G major. G. G. Move down inside the 3 lines. Good. I don't think you're on G yet. Okay, now that was the same pattern. Could you make yours different than hers? Because if I say, what did you have for breakfast? Eggs. They're two different things, right? Now Julie's going to play hers, and you give her something different to end it. All right? Julie? And end on G. Good. All right? How about Josh and Dana? Listen to this one. I saw them practicing. Very good. Came right back to the home tone. All right, let's hear you two. Want to go? Okay, Chad. Start on G, Chad. Come down one step and you'll be on G. There you go. Did you notice something about their pattern? Listen to it again, see if you've heard it today. Okay, it almost sounded like what? In a minute, you Anybody else who had a great one they want to share with the class? Okay, you too. Here we go. Very nice. Very good. Very good job today, kids. Carefully move your chairs back halfway, please.
The use of the round provides an excellent framework to address standards 3 and 4, which are improvisation and composition. Now, in addition to the round frère-à-jacques, there were also individual keyboard parts for the students that used standard musical notation, and that provided the context for the music reading, which also we know is standard 5. The students are able to track their individual parts, and the peer teaching opportunities that are afforded by the split keyboard encourages cooperative learning. Now again, the use of the remote control for the purposes of muting and unmuting the student keyboards and also turning the student speakers on and off helped to provide the structure and the guidelines for the composing and improvising activities, as Shelby had one of the guidelines was indeed, how long do you have to create and improvise? Through the use of the remote, she had the ability to not only turn the speakers of all the keyboards off and on. You'll notice the little speaker icon at the top of the screen is showing now that all the speakers in the room are on, all the speakers are off. An important point, though, is that the students' headphones were always active. That was one way that Shelby could have the students practicing their creativity, practice their improvisations, but not have the room flooded with sound. When she needed to get their attention, she was also able to what's called mute the student keyboards, turning those keyboards off and on so that they would no longer play. Shelby also was able to use, as an aside, her own system for using musical cues for the purposes of classroom management and also process. Again, using the remote control, there were a series of special commands that she used to send musical cues to the students so they knew it was time to stop their improvising activity and to take the headphones off. You actually heard the teacher keyboard speak to the students.
Please stop and listen now.
And then there was the cue for headphones off. At the very end of this activity, which you didn't see in this part of the teaching time, Shelby was also able to use the rhythm activities that are built into the teacher keyboard to develop style as one aspect of being creative and being an improviser. Mike?
Before we review our final teacher, I want to invite your questions. After this final presentation, we'll take as many questions as time permits. Once again, the toll-free number here is 800-423-0619. Or you can also email us at bmore@unlinfo.unl.edu. We now move to Madison, Wisconsin, where Kathy Punwar is teaching a 7th grade class. The content standards Kathy will address are 6, 7, 8, and 9. Listen to analyzing music, evaluating music and performances, understanding relationships between music and other disciplines, and understanding music in relation to history and culture.
I'll repeat that. I'm going to ask you to listen to a recording, and I'm going to ask you a few questions about it after you've heard it.
Walk, believer, walk, walk, believer, walk, walk, tell you walk, walk, tell you walk, don't believe a song, don't believe a song, don't tell you song, don't tell you song.
Okay, cool, you guys are moving to it. Cool, fun. If I asked you what is the response of that song, what would you say? What's the response in that song? Listen again. All right.
Walk, believer, walk,
Just that much. What was the response? What? That's kind of hard to understand the words. Again.
walk, believer, walk, walk, believer, walk, walk, tell you walk, walk, tell you walk, don't believe a song, don't believe a song.
Here. Daniel. Okay. Why did you think that was the response?
Because they were like singing and then right after they stopped and then he
Okay, so it seemed to be like a bunch of people coming in and saying Daniel altogether. They were responding to something that was hard for us to understand at first. Okay, I'm going to tell you what it is. Walk, believer, walk. Right? And then later he says walk, Daniel walk. Now listen to it.
Walk, believer, walk. Walk, believer, walk. Walk, tell you walk.
Walk, Daniel, walk. Shout, believer, shout.
Shout, believer, shout.
Shout, Daniel, shout.
Shout, tell you shout.
How many people do you think are singing this part here, which I'm going to label as the call? What do you think, Paul?
4.
You think 4 people are singing it? Okay. What do you think, Aaron?
2.
Billy, what were you going to say? 2. Okay, let's listen.
Walk, believer, walk.
Good job.
1.
All right, now, I just played the first part. Let's listen a little further.
Walk, believer, walk. Walk, believer, walk. Walk, tell you walk.
No, actually, it's kind of hard to tell. When you first hear it, when Jeff first heard it, it was like one person. But then there was like this other voice that was just kind of joining them in on this call. But yeah, almost kind of echoing them. Usually a call is done by one person. Here, we've got someone else kind of joining in a little bit. Usually it's one. How many people are singing the response?
1. 2.
Walk, believer, walk. Walk, believer, walk. Walk, tell you walk. Walk, tell you walk.
I don't know the answer to that question. That's a big question mark, but is it more than one?
Yeah.
Definitely. It could be 2, 3, I'm guessing that it may be even 4 or 5. It could even be larger than that, I mean in a response. And what do you notice about the response? It's always what?
Daniel.
Always Daniel. It's always the same thing. The call, it's similar. I mean, we have walk, believer, walk, believer, walk. Then we have walk, Daniel. It's similar, but there are some changes in it. So now that we know that, one more time, listen.
Walk, believer, walk. Walk, believer, walk. Walk, tell you walk. Walk, tell you walk. Don't believer, shout. Don't believer, shout. Don't tell you shout. Don't tell you shout.
What? This question we might not have a particular answer for right now. I'm going to ask you it again at the end of class. What might this song, what might its purpose be? What might the purpose of this song be? Okay, teach about some guy named Daniel. Something about Daniel. Who would be singing this? What kind of group of people? Okay, he's saying maybe slaves during the Civil War. You guys are studying the Civil War right now. Why would slaves be singing this? Okay, bring up their spirits, which it is. I mean, just hearing it, I'm seeing some of you kind of jamming around and moving, kind of brings up your spirits. It's conceivable that it could be sung by that group of people. Paul, were you going to say something too? Sing it? So it is, there's an upliftingness to the song, right? Something uplifting about it. What makes it easy for those people that are singing the response? What makes it easy for them, Jeff?
Did you say the same Daniel?
Right. Do you have to be like a trained musician to sing this response? No, I don't think so. You could just be anybody and learn this response and yet still be a part of the music, right? I mean, you can just, the person who's doing the call, they probably should really know what they're doing because they've got to lead that. They are some kind of a leader here, right? Probably have to know what they're doing. But once you've learned that response, man, you can just jump in and just do it. We're going to try that here in class. I'm going to ask you to find on your keyboards, put the splitters on. Make sure the splitters are on your keyboard. And on your side of the keyboard, find the pitches A, B, and C. Tell me if you're having any help finding them. Why don't you take the ones in the middle A, B, and C. Be specific. So middle A, B, and C. Right there. All right. And look around here. Oh, good job. Find pitches in this order: A, C, B, A. A, C, B, A. So what is it from A to C?
C.
What is that, a step or a skip?
Skip.
It's a skip. Then if I'm going from C to B to A, how am I moving?
Step.
By step. So we're making a skip, A up to C, and then back down to A. Will you play it in this rhythm? Doing A, C, B, A, just like that. Try it. A, C, B, A. I will. A, C, B, A. One more time. Do it. A, C, B, A. Wait for B, then A, C, B, A. 1, 2, 3, and again. A, C, B. All right, now you're ready to do some jamming and a call and response. Are you the call or are you the response? You're the response. I'm going to be the call, all right? Right now, you have to be really in control here and not play while I'm doing the response. You wait. All right, so thank you. While I'm doing the call. Thank you. See, you know. While I'm doing the call. Yeah, Anthony. Okay, the call, because why? Okay, it's different. Had a variety of stuff. What kept it, for one, what made it easy for you to participate in that? You know exactly what to do. You could do that response. Did that response sound good with the calls?
Yes.
Yeah, it was kind of, and what you played kept it really kind of glued together. That was the part that really was the common ground, sounded really great. Could anybody pretty much come in here and be a part of that call if they wanted to? Yeah, I mean, you can include anyone. Could anyone stand up there and play what I did for the call?
No.
Not everyone, but I'll bet that you could still create some calls, but it would be different than the response. You would want to create something that's different than the response. But that's what's so great about a call and response type of piece, is that anybody can do the response. Think about, you brought up the Civil War, Anthony. When soldiers were marching in the Civil War, when slaves were working in the fields in the Civil War, did they have boom boxes to listen to, Walkmans, those kinds of things? So how did they provide entertainment? By singing, and they had to do it themselves. Did they hire out a band? No, I don't think so. Right? They had to create the music themselves. Were they all trained musicians? No. So think about if you had to provide entertainment for yourself, like when you do homework, right? You turn on the radio, right? Turn on the TV. You've got entertainment going on, and somebody's providing it for you. Go back 130 years, or go back 100 years before we had those kinds of devices, and people had to provide it for themselves. But they weren't all necessarily trained musicians, correct? So, in order for them to be able to be included in some of the music, it was important to be able to have music that they could do that. So, call and response was one form of music that could include people. Didn't matter what their abilities were. And in fact, there are a lot of work songs that were created so that if they were like railroad workers, if you were a railroad worker, I can say that 3 times fast, then you would want to have something to help those days go faster. When you turn on the radio to do your homework, does it kind of help the time go by? Yeah. No, it makes it a little more entertaining. Yeah. People had to do the same thing back in that time period. So I'm going to ask you now, though, to be the creators of call and response at your keyboards. I'm going to hand out a card to you, and on that card it is printed call and response, or you might see repeated melodic patterns. Right? If you were to do a repeated pattern, if Peter created a pattern, what would Tremaine play if they had repeated pattern? Peter creates a pattern, what would Tremaine play? The same pattern. Repeated melodic pattern. That means exact copy of what they played. If you get the card that says call and response, Anthony creates a pattern, Brian creates Anthony creates the call, Brian creates the response, which is something that is completely different. Thank you. All right, so that's what we're looking for here. So I'm going to hand out the cards randomly, and I'm going to set you up at your keyboard so that you can work as partners. All right. Pick a card, any card, gentlemen. Headphones off. Okay. I'm going to ask different groups to do their either call and response or repeated pattern. The rest of us need to listen and determine if what we're hearing is call and response or if it's a repeated pattern. It's the same thing twice. Paul and Jeff, why don't you start?
No.
And turn your speakers on, and you go. What do we have here?
Peter Brogan.
Thank you very much. Thank you for answering my question. Do we have a repeated pattern, or do we have a call and response?
Repeated
We
pattern.
repeated pattern, which then they ended it together. Nicely done. Grand performance. Ladies. Turn your speaker on. Oh yeah, thank you, Paul, for giving yourself a round of applause. Okay. That's all right. Listen carefully. Chana? That was what she was going. That was what she was playing. Try one more time. That was good. So I know exactly what she did. That's all right. You're doing good.
She knows how to play it.
There you go. Go, Shauna. Okay. What do we have? Repeated pattern. Very nicely done. Brian and Anthony, you're on.
We're not really ready. We have to give them a round
Okay,
of
what is
applause.
it? Oh, we have to give them a round of applause again. So nice for you to applaud. Your peers. That's so great. Okay, I'll give you guys a little more time. Joanna and Ebony. All right. Look at this. I did. All right, now turn on your speakers. All right, go for it. There you go. Good. I want to hear one more time. Ebony, start. What is it? Call and response. It's a good pattern. I really liked it. And what was really nice, they moved in similar ways. They moved similarly, but yet they were still different notes, different pattern. Nice job, ladies. Brian and Anthony, you're coming up next. All right, speakers on. Okay. Yeah, they're all psyched. They're ready for this grand performance, I can tell.
Golf?
Nice. What is it?
Call and response.
Call and response. Can you do it again? I really like that. It sounds really good. Oh, it's okay. Great song. If all we heard in music was repeated pattern, what would be the problem with that? Okay, if you guys had repeated pattern, if we heard you continue to play that for maybe 30 seconds, right? Because like when we first heard it, it's like, yeah, great job, repeated, right? But then you said, what was your words, Jeff? Boring, and it get on your nerves. Yeah, I like that one. It start getting on your nerves. If you hear that same thing. All right, now, you made some suggestions that I could do to make it more interesting. You said I could change the tempo, I could change the instrument. All right, so we do need to make some changes, right? However, when we played the call and response, and you guys played the response, and I played the call, you were playing the same thing, but I was playing something different. Good, thank you for saying that. So that was providing us with the variety. So we use repeated patterns as our glue, right? I mean, that's the word that I'm using for it. We use a repeated pattern. That's sometimes the glue that keeps it together, all right? And if you listen to music, really any piece of music at all, it can be a symphony, it can be something that you're listening to on the radio, on CD that you're listening to right now, you will find repeated patterns in it, I guarantee. One of the repeated patterns that you'll probably hear most often is something maybe like this. Is that a repeated pattern?
Yeah, but it's cool.
But, well, it's cool. But if you were hearing this for like 5 or 10 minutes with nothing else, would it start to get a little less cool?
Let's get ready to rumble.
Let's be ready to rumble. Good, I like that. But a repeated pattern, I mean, it's a good point. A repeated pattern, we have them in music all the time, but there's usually something else then that provides us with the variety. Right, there's chorus and there's verses. All right, so we need the variety. All right, for contrast, we need to have that. Take a look around this room. Take a look in this room, on the walls. Where do you see repeated pattern? Where do you see things that kind of keep it glued together? Paul?
The border on that one book.
Okay, we have a border here that has a pattern that repeats. So there's kind of a flow to that because there's repetition. Where else is there a repeated pattern? Look for some obvious things too.
Like kind of.
Okay, kind of. That gets pretty abstract over there, I'm telling you. But there actually is repeated pattern in that. I can see where there is. You have to look for it a little more. Good. Look at, yeah, we got to that. Look at the ceiling tiles.
The floor.
And the floor tiles. Yeah, come in. At the keyboards. Do you have repeated patterns on your keyboards?
Yeah.
Yeah, and in the patterns, when you're learning where all the different keys are, you've got the 3 black key closer than the 2 black key, then the 3 and the 2. It's very predictable. Aaron.
That file cabinet.
File cabinet, 4 drawers, looking exactly the same, repetition. All right, what provides the ceiling, let's go back to the ceiling tiles for a second. What provides us with some,
You want me to get that?
thank you. What provides us with some contrast? Okay, the lights.
Texture.
Texture, good. We've got some texture on those tiles. No, not in here. Sorry. So good. We have, if we had the ceiling, well, let's imagine that the light source is coming from someplace else. We don't have the light fixtures there, and we don't have the vents, and we have no texture.
It would be dull.
Right? It would be dull. It would be more dull than it is as it is now. It would be more like the floor, because if you look at the floor is. Although the floor does have texture. I mean, I like the fact that Jeff brought that up. And what?
It's just square.
It's just square for square. Now let's just use our imaginations for just a second here. Imagine this room, if you will, with all the ceiling tiles, multiple shapes that somehow in a puzzle they fit together, but all different shapes.
It'll be cool.
Each of them has a different pattern on it.
It'll kind of be annoying to look at.
Okay, good point. It might be a little annoying to look at, but I mean, initially thinking about it, it is kind of cool. If we had each wall a different color, if the floor tiles were all different colors, it'd be a little scary. I mean, if you think about it, in a sense, you're like, oh, that'd be kind of radical. But how long a time would you want to spend in a room looking at that? I don't. Not even a class, maybe. So too much contrast, too much different stuff, also is not a good thing. If I played for you some notes. Right? I mean, it's a series of notes. There really wasn't anything to keep it glued together. It's not terrible, but it really doesn't really go anywhere. It doesn't have any substance to it. So music needs to have both of those things to bring it together. Otherwise, we have too much of a good thing, too much of the same thing, or we have so much that's different that we lose our interest because there's no glue to keep it together. You will have opportunity, I know, in this class to write and create your own composition. When you do that, you need to keep that in mind. You will want to make sure that in your composition, you have something that repeats, that comes back. But you'll also want to make sure it's not the same thing, measure after measure after measure.
Kathy is using the technology to assist in creating active learning experiences. Now, the listening music are all excerpts that are provided on 2 compact discs. With remote control, she played examples as short as 2 seconds and as long as the entire excerpt. Notice that there was a use of oral discourse, of discussing with the technology assisting her in that enterprise. Kathy was able to interact with all the students since the listening example was controlled via the remote control. She could be with her students moving around the room. Now, that use of guided discussion aids the students in listening to and analyzing and describing music. Kathy's also obviously aware of the total curriculum of her students at the middle school. She's aware, for example, that they're studying the Civil War in various classes, and she's helping students make the connection from the music class to the study of the Civil War. When Kathy asked the students to provide the response to her call when she was playing, students were able to see and hear her model Standards 3 and 4, the improvisation and composition herself. This original piece was then able to be analyzed, evaluated by the entire class. And this culminated in relating the analysis to real-world experiences as she tied in call and response music as an aspect of the time of the Civil War. Now, reflecting back on Kathy's lesson, Standard 6, Listening and Analyzing, this was an activity that was in progress. These students obviously knew the vocabulary to discuss. They knew how to direct their attention to the listening example. Standard 7, focusing on evaluation, was done student to student. I think the quality of the student evaluation, of the discussion that they had, really improved as more student pieces were discussed. I hope you noticed that. Standards 8 and 9, the relation of music to other arts and in relation to the history and culture, were being presented in a more teacher-directed lecture style. Now, Kathy also closed this lesson with a comment on how these student activities would be necessary later on to create original compositions. Her use of technology was clearly a resource for teaching. It wasn't the main focal point. In short, she used the technology as an electronic chalkboard. Matter of fact, she still uses the chalkboard. Mike.
Now we're ready for you to get involved. Once again, our telephone number is 800-423-0619. And our email address is bmore@unlinfo.unl.edu. As I said earlier, we'll answer as many questions as we can for the remainder of our time. However, if you do call, and if we do not answer your question, or you send us email and we will respond to you over the course of the next week. All the email responses will be answered if you do not hear your answer on the air tonight. Actually, we're going to start first with Brian. Brian has a few emails in his hand. Go ahead and read the question, Brian, and go for it.
This is an email question from a person in Texas, and asks, could this technique, could this curriculum be incorporated to involve ORF instruments? That's a really good question. Many times when you're using technology, a discussion that comes up is, what do I do with it? And I think the most important point is, what is your curriculum? What is it you want to achieve? In this case, the curriculum that's been designed to use music and education, it is integrative in nature. So we've had many teachers that have gone through and taken ORF instruments, used them, and incorporated them into the instruction. I'll just mention one thing on the keyboard itself. Each of these keyboards has a pitch control on it. So if you are using either band instruments, ORF instruments, or some kind of other pitched instruments in which you want to integrate in the classroom, you have the ability to move the pitch of the keyboards around to line up with that. So we encourage teachers, when they're using technology and using in this particular curriculum, to be integrative, to add their own ideas to it. Anything you want to add to that?
No, I think you've covered that. Do you have another question there that we want to cover?
There was another question here was asked in relation to Lauren Altier's class, the very first class that you saw. The students obviously learned these songs ahead of time where they taught these songs using this equipment. The instruction you saw was at about the end of 2 weeks with music and education. They were instructed the entire time with that. So they had to learn the songs from the beginning using the keyboards.
And I might add to that one of the first activities in every module of instruction is singing. There's plenty of singing to do. They will learn these songs over the course of time in singing. I had a question also from another email, a question about, is there any emphasis put on the quality of singing and pitch matching? I think you noticed early on Lauren did positively reinforce a student who was singing while she was doing the finger matching, tone matching drills. And yes, it's not in the curriculum though. You know, this is a teacher responsibility. Teachers, if you want to take time to make sure they sing well, that they're matching pitches perfectly, that's your responsibility. As it is in terms of hand positioning and fingering. If you want to spend more time, this system is certainly flexible enough, and any system should be flexible enough that you use to make sure that you can cover those issues that you feel most important for your students.
Let me follow up with that. Here's another email question from someone in Arizona. Is any attention given to improving the students' singing or to pitching the songs differently so that they are more appropriate for student voices? One of the great things about technology, I mentioned earlier that it gives the students a stable tonal center with the speaker that can be close to them, much easier for matching pitch. One of the other great things about using MIDI technology, it's very easy to transpose any of the music at any of the time. Let me show you one thing on one of the software screens here. We'll just take the Nayu Has Jazz song that we looked at earlier. We have the ability to take any one of these songs, and while it's being played, I'll just get it playing here, we can take it and transpose it up half steps, down half steps, anytime. This could either be done while the music is playing, as I'm doing here, or we can stop the music, set up the key ahead of time that we'd like the song to be pitched in. Perhaps it's too high for the student's singing voice. We're all ready to go. So you have entire flexibility through the use of MIDI technology.
I have another question on email. This one's, well, I'm not exactly sure where this one's from, actually. Are there opportunities to input songs other than the songs that are already programmed? Yes, a number of ways to do that. Built into every keyboard, and certainly on the teacher keyboard, let me go this way, there is a built-in sequencer. On the teacher keyboard, you can create your own songs, store them on the hard drive of the computer. Actually, Brian might be able to show you the original songbook. And you can pull those songs up and use them right along with the curriculum as you will. The songs will go out to the students the same way all the other songs do. And actually, traveling around the country, a lot of elementary schools have used this for a number of motivational songs that they're using, for instance, on drug programs, anti-drug programs, and like I've seen teachers go ahead and put them in there. Let's go a little farther. This is an original song that was composed and is in our original songbook. Let's go a little farther. We have a mixer control box that controls all of the sound sources, which is down here below. It's a rather important piece of equipment. In the back is an auxiliary input that would allow you to plug in cassette players, other CD players. Perhaps you have sequences on another keyboard. By hooking them into the back of that mixer control box, those particular sequences could go to any of the keyboards just as songs from the curriculum. And finally, the CD player is a standard CD player that allows you to use any CDs you would like. So if you have other Silver Burdette, if you have other if you have other kinds of things you want to incorporate that are on CD, you can certainly do that.
Here's another question concerning listening. How do you address listening to oneself? The examples that we saw typically encourage group singing over recording or group playing over recording. One of the aspects of most music teaching in this country is we tend to be ensemble-based, group-based. And then how do we compare that with standards where we want to look at individual student success? So how do you help a student improve their ability on an individual basis? One of the things that's difficult to hear from watching the video clips of the different classrooms is the fact that with each student having their own headphone, it's possible for the teacher to put the keyboards into one of 3 different modes. The mode that you saw most of the time was what was called the split mode. In that situation, if the speakers were turned off on the keyboard, the students would only hear each other. In what was called normal mode, it's also possible to have the student hear both sides of the keyboard. So it's possible for a student to hear only themselves. It's also possible for them to hear both sides together, and through the use of turning the speakers back on, they could hear the entire classroom. So you've got a lot of ability to have students focus on different types of oral stimulus.
Great. I have a general question here from Hastings Middle School. I would like to set up a composer station for student use grades 6 through 8. What suggestions do you have? My first suggestion is making sure you determine the outcomes of that composer station. All too often we go out and spend a lot of money on equipment before we decide where we want our students to be. The first step is to take a look at what you want your students to do. For instance, I just jotted down a couple quick things. In that composer station, will they notate? Do they know how to notate already? Is that a process for them to learn? while composing, or is that something that happens before that? These are issues you want to take care of, obviously prior to purchasing a lot of equipment and then trying to plug that in kind of backwards. Will they learn to orchestrate using this equipment, or will they know how to orchestrate before? Do they have general use of sequencers, or is that what they want to learn? Are they learning just the technology or both? Those are kinds of questions you need to answer before you go and purchase equipment. I'll give you my personal opinion. I like the idea of young students, certainly 6 through 8 and even high school, working in composing at a sequencer, digital recorder, in front of a computer. For me, the visual aspect of what happens in computer programming, being able to see the measures and see which notes are played as opposed to an onboard sequencer on a keyboard, I think is far more effective for students since this is a visual generation. The basic equipment I wrote down very quickly would be a computer, some sort of sequencing software. A number of companies make them, everything from Vision, Easy Vision to MasterTrax Pro and beyond that. You might want a software package for notation. I would use the notation package with caution, however. It would seem to me that it would be more important that they learn notation before they use notation. It's an important part to me. We do make another product called a Music Suite, which does do this. I won't go into that here. You can certainly give us a call or email me, and I can send you more information on that. Of course, a lot of companies also make a very similar kind of product.
Question here, can't most of these activities be taught without the technology? If technology only duplicates regular practice, what is the benefit? That's a really excellent question. It's a good one to ask. Why do all of this? What's going on here? A couple things. Very early on, when I began working with technology, and especially working with this particular curriculum, one of the things I was able to do was to do a research study of young children working with music. And very early on, it was clear in the minds of students there is the real music, the stuff we love, then there's the stuff we do in school. And even kids as young as 3rd grade, 2nd grade, make the differentiation between, well, there's real music and there's the stuff we do in school. For a lot of students out there in the world, apart from school, this is real music to them. Another concern also is just the role of notated music in our society today. I think you'll see less and less places where we see traditional notation. So it was important to get the lead sheet approach. We haven't shown you any of the print music, but we do take a lead sheet approach to try to take the music and make it more personal. This is a generation that thrives on technology. So for a lot of students, it's a very motivating, very exciting aspect of their life. We're starting to get a number of students that are as incoming freshmen to the University of Nebraska who are trying to ask questions like, can I be a music major and also major in technology? So it's a generational issue to a point. I think also what you're able to do with the technology is to focus in on specific aspects. We want to focus on rhythm. We can use the rhythm styles that are here. We want to focus on timbre. We have 128 different timbres to select from, so that becomes an important part. We stress this time and time again, this is technology assisting us as the teacher. I think nothing is better than a great professional music educator. The technology just helps that teacher become even more effective.
I'd like to, I think I call it the transparent transport system, a system that you really don't see working, but it really works to teach more efficiently, and I think more, you cover more ground a lot quicker. I have a couple short burst questions. One is, what is the youngest recommended age for this system? We originally designed this system as a K through, actually from about a 3 through 8 system. We know many teachers are now using this in the younger levels, particularly K, 1 and 2. And we have pre-MIE modules of some very basic models working on large motor skills and tone matching to actually assist that process. So you can probably use it K through 8 with a more emphasis on 3 through 8 or 2 through 8. From Fairhaven, Massachusetts, how can I hook up a guitar or keyboard to a computer and record what I play? You need a keyboard, a guitar that has a MIDI interface, which is kind of rare. A couple companies do make them. Probably your best bet is a keyboard, unless you're a guitar player. And then you need a computer, and you probably need what's called a MIDI interface, way to communicate between the instrument itself and the keyboard and the computer. And you'll need software, which we call sequencing software, to record what you play. If you're looking for acoustic recording at that level, digital recording is a whole different area, which if you're interested in that, let me know through the email, and I'll talk to you directly about that as well.
Question from, let's see, New Hampshire. How long does it take the average teacher to learn your setup and its ins and outs, especially, and I'll stress the word especially, if they have no prior technological training? Excellent first question. The follow-up question is, what kind of help is available to help them when things go wrong? And those of you that have worked with technology, something will always happen that you just don't expect. So those things do occur. In terms of the training part of it, I think an important part is staff in service, faculty in service. How do we as faculty members keep up on the latest things that are going on that our students are using at home? With this particular program, what is part of the entire curriculum is 1 week of participation in a teacher institute in which teachers are taken through the operation of the computer, operation of all the keyboard, the compact discs, all the aspects of the particular program. It's a fairly intensive, about a 56-hour set of instruction at the graduate level, in fact. And so we have found that to be a really important facet of the preparation for teachers to be working with technology, at least in this particular program. Follow-up support is also very, very important. It's impossible to talk about technology without talking about some kind of a manufacturing or company. That's what technology is. Few schools are producing their own technology. They're relying upon outside sources to provide that. So technical support becomes very, very helpful. I might ask you to respond to the comment about the kind of technical support that's offered, in a company like a Yamaha.
Well, technical support for this particular product is an 800 tech support line available 5 days a week through school hours for teachers to call in and ask questions, very specific questions on glitches they may be having with music and education. Overall, the company has a number of support lines for other products as well. I'm sure many people know those. If you're not particularly sure about which piece of equipment you have or where you would like to contact, I would recommend calling, first of all, to your local Yamaha dealer if, in fact, it's a piece of equipment you'd like some tech support on. If you have music and education, you already know the tech support number. That's a big part of training. And you know our tech support guy, Eric, who does answer all those calls. We have a question from, I'm going to have Brian help me with this. Brian, we have a question from Houston, Texas. Please show a close-up and explain what piece of equipment is being accessed by the remote. And how does it access the computer? It's kind of an interesting system that we've designed here.
We're using the remote control that came with the compact disc player itself. And then what's happening is that signal is going into a little infrared box, which I'll pry off here. And this is a sensor that normally will be placed on top of the computer, and it allows the teacher to be pretty much anywhere in the room, and through the infrared signals from the remote control not only the student keyboards, but the teacher keyboard, the compact disc player, and in essence the computer itself. You can actually be running the software from the remote control. Just a quick comment, the beeps that you've been hearing both on the videotape and in here, that's just simply, you can set a preference setting on the remote that every time a button is pushed, you get a little reinforcing beep so that gives you the feeling that you know that something is happening.
Okay, another question from Memphis. Were all the lesson plans example provided by the MIE system or developed by each teacher? That's a great question. I have, there are basic lesson plans built into this entire system for 80 modules of instruction, which is a number of years of instruction. What I think you saw, and to me the classic component of this is that the teacher was in the driver's seat and made decisions on how to affect or how to change each lesson plan to really teach particularly what they wanted to accomplish in that lesson. So yes, we do have an outline. Yes, it's there to follow. In my experience, there are very few teachers that follow it note for note, and we're thrilled with that because the magic of the system is having the mastery of the teacher involved and having them teach, having them make those decisions, and making sure that their students are accomplishing exactly what they've planned to do.
A couple of phone calls that also came in here. What level is this best for? Can it be used for how young, how old, et cetera, et cetera? We've had some of our teachers actually use the electronic keyboards with as early as kindergarten students, and even in some cases with preschool age students. Those activities are pretty specific for that age level learner, and a lot of pacing issues come into play with that. In terms of the curriculum as you're seeing presented on the three teachers that we saw here this evening, usually second semester, second grade would be a kind of a good ballpark early stage to start at. And right now we're finding this particular curriculum is having a lot of use in middle school and high school applications, especially in exploratory general music courses. We've had a number of high schools that are using it, and there's also been some colleges that have used the music and education either in a method situation or in a situation where they are trying to work with elementary education majors who are going to become future teachers.
Great. I have one here for you, Brian. A number of questions. This is from, we are at DePaul University. Is there a set of lesson plans that go along with the program? I think we answered that yes, there is a set of lesson plans. They are an outline form. They are certainly not lockstep at best. Is the teacher's computer solely for the program? Does the MIE program allow it to multitask in order to do other things in class? Yes, it is a multitask opportunity. MIE is a very, very efficient program, very small, and the computer can be used for a number of other tasks. It's not uncommon to find Claris Works, maybe a graphics program on the same computer, and the ability to use those are very easy and very simple to do. How does this monetarily make itself available in music classrooms? Funds are scarce enough without trying to convince a board to bring in more funds for new technology. What is the approximate cost for this system, a 25-person classroom? There is one cost for this system. It is a 30-student opportunity, 15 student keyboards, 1 teacher keyboard, the CD player, all the curriculum, the listening examples on CD, powered speakers, teacher training, tech support, all of that. And what that price, effective January 1st, is $12,900, which initially is a lot of money to ask for. However, on the other hand, the benefit of what goes on in this class is certainly worth arguing. There are also lease plans. You can spread this out over 5 years on a lease-to-own plan, so it's really not a large amount of money at one time. And if it's illegal to lease in your state, there are other ways for us to take care of that leasing issue, so you can spread payments out. If you want more information about that, we'll certainly be happy to help with you. I think it's time for us to begin to talk about the next phase of technology in our schools. I think it's time to talk about how Roush and Shaw might impact what we do. I think it's time for us to go to our administrators and have them make a statement about where they think arts education and certainly music education falls into the overall curriculum. I think we need to keep asking for new technology. No question about it. And I think administrators ought to at least understand that we're going to continue to ask. It's our job to ask for that. It's our job to make our classroom better. So keep asking. You're going to get it. What's next?
Could a teacher with hardly any keyboard skills herself use the Yamaha MIE program effectively? Let me answer that one of two ways. If you are a music educator trained to be a music teacher, I would say yes. If you are not a music educator, I think you're going to have great difficulty to do that. I think this particular program and the curriculum to be effective, and especially in light of the standards, we're expecting and assuming that you are a trained music professional that really understands issues of curriculum, issues of instruction, issues of learning style, all those different facets that make good teaching. So I think if you're a trained musician and a music educator, I don't see any problem at all. If you aren't, if you're a classroom teacher that maybe is not there as a music specialist, I think there might be some difficulty with that, but you'd have the same kind of discussion no matter what kind of content area that you'd be focusing on.
You want to answer this one, Brian? Can you tell us the compatibility of the computer keyboard system? Do you need certain brands or types of units to make this work? What's the estimated setup cost? We just covered that. But I think we should talk about the computer a little bit.
Okay. In this particular setup, we're using a Macintosh computer, and that particular computer, any one of the current models are going to be fine. One of the aspects of technology, because there is so much ability to take this piece of hardware with this piece of software, it gets very difficult to make this selection from all the smorgasbord that's out there. So a lot of teachers have found when you have products that are all put together, curriculum with a particular model of keyboard, with a particular model of compact disc player, with the software included, that makes things a lot easier because they are intended, they're developed to be used together. So this particular keyboard is only available through the Music and Education program. If you're trying to do other types of keyboard activities, you could simply go to one of the professional level keyboards, but your curricular initiatives will be a little different. You obviously then are going to have different outcomes, different desires. Know what you want to teach first, and then it's very easy to match up the resources with what you're trying to accomplish.
Great. From Furman University. Do you find that limitations in class objectives and students' limited keyboard experience conflict? Are the instructors able to address proper keyboard technique in these class situations? Well, they can certainly address keyboard technique. The technique is an issue, again, that's teacher-driven, and there are plenty of opportunities. There are plenty of opportunities to be able to talk about that and stop and pause and have them work on that. You know, the remote control is a great opportunity in this class because you can walk around the classroom. You saw Kathy do that extremely well, taking the remote, being out, discussing things with kids, and working with that. This is the chance to go over and say, wait a second, let's make sure your hands are right, let's make sure the wrists are in the right places. You have all that opportunity you can, at the same time reinforcing singing. The limitations in class objectives against limited keyboard experience. The beauty of this program is it's not a keyboard lab. Keyboard performance is a lower priority to us than the understanding and the application of the concept. Now that's kind of a shift. I used to be a band director, and performance is a real big outcome in my life. And when that happens, certainly there is a little bit of a paradigm shift to accept what we would consider maybe less than perfect performances. However, when a student can tell you what that scale is visually, and can hear that scale and identify it, and can create with it, we've been pretty successful. The fact that they can play as a byproduct or an additional byproduct based on your experience and your desire to teach that can only make it better.
This is great. We have a question from one of the collegiate MANC chapters, and I'm even going to mention it's chapter 583 in, let's see, you're in Memphis. On the average, how long does it take for a teacher to become proficient on the system? We have a 1 week of the Teacher Institute, and that's really critical. And that training happens in Grand Rapids at a national institute that we have. It happens either in January or in the summer. And following that week of instruction, we encourage teachers to go back, try teaching with it, take it slow. It's like learning any kind of new curricular or learning a new instrument, matter of fact, that it does take some time. We have found that I think most teachers tend to get pretty comfortable within that first semester, sometimes even that first quarter. A lot of it is your level of comfort with technology. It does take practice. Even people that are really, really technically astute, when you're doing something like this, running a remote control, standing up, moving around the room, it does take some practice. So you want to try to put some time aside, but I would say at least by that first semester, most of our teachers are feeling very, 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 very comfortable.
Yeah, in addition to that, I think that you can find that many teachers will use that first year, and they should use that first year as their on-the-job training year. What we can't bring to training are all the students and all the different class activities and the fire drills and all of the other activities that they have to face on a daily basis. So that first year, it's really getting planted very, very solidly in using the system, using the technology, and moving on from that. So then the second year, I think they turn out to be spectacular teachers, certainly, and they can move farther into the curriculum if they want to, or whatever supplemental activities that they've done, they've got pretty much sequenced in their own fashion, and it's working very, very well.
This is a question from someone in Kentucky, and this is a question I hear a number of times doing the kind of things that I do with technology. I even teach coursework for our music education majors here at Nebraska in technology. With respect to the real music versus what we do in school, does the focus on electronic sound create the danger of developing a generation of consumers who will reject the traditional musical instruments in favor of only accepting the electronic musical sounds? I think you can also add to that, are we going to be running into a situation where we've got teachers or students who are going to be rejecting traditional music notation systems for the types of things that are available on MIDI? That's a really important question. I think in terms of the timbre and the electronic music versus the more traditional music, I don't think it's so much the timbre, it's what we do with the music. I direct a youth symphony here in town, and the reason students are in a youth symphony is to perform, to play, to learn repertoire through active participation. If we raise a generation of music students who are simply consumers, and that's all they do, I think we will be in danger of losing them to the electronic sound. There's a lot of kids out there that have much better sound systems at home than they hear in the schools, and I think you all have some of those students. If we get them engaged in doing the kinds of things we've seen tonight, focusing on creativity, focusing on improvisation, relating music to other curricular areas, relating music to other art forms, higher levels of thinking in music, now you've got a student that when they come out of here don't want to be just consumers of music, they want to be users of music, creators of music, they want to make it their own. I think then you're going to be seeing those kinds of future parents and future taxpayers, if you will, wanting to participate in music in more traditional situations. So it's a process.
Certainly, and at MIE there's also a great opportunity, Brian, you might agree that this little CD player here that provides a number of listening examples that do transcend all musical time periods and styles. There's a tremendous amount of the masterworks and kinds of music that students really need to have to understand the relationship of how music has progressed from day one to now. Certainly electronic music is part of that, but it's not the big picture. And while they may be sitting in front of an electronic keyboard and they're punching a button that says saxophone that we know is not a saxophone, the job of the teacher then is to create the opportunity for them to know the difference between that saxophone and a saxophone.
The other part that opens up too is with the use of the internet and also all the other types of timbres that are available, we can now have students come to grips with not just the traditional Western European instruments, but also some of the ethnic instruments. Music from Africa, instruments from Asia, Mexico. Those kinds of instruments that we typically don't see in our music classrooms, they can get access to experiencing those styles. Many times those students then want to go out and get more information.
Yeah, it's a great opportunity. I think it's a real challenge for us to integrate that, but it's the best opportunity we've had in years, I think, at least since I've been in music. This is a great question. What is the topic for the next teleconference? MENC, this is the first in a series. I'm not sure that's been decided. My recommendation to you is to contact MENC. You can do that through menc.org. That is their homepage. Send that message to the people in Washington, and I'm sure they'll get back with you with the next one. This will be a series. I'm not sure how long, or I don't know the interval between the next session. They'll answer that in Washington and Reston. Yeah.
Here's a question. How durable are the keyboards in regards to wear and tear that the students give it, and do the keyboards have any limitations in terms of timbre? Most technology, be it a keyboard, a computer, compact disc, if you are comfortable in the classroom, it is comfortable in the classroom. So in terms of humidity and that kinds of things, if your classroom is kept at a comfortable rate for you, you'll be just fine. We've had a really high success rate of these keyboards being very durable. In our particular lab here at Nebraska, we've not had any repairs or things to worry about. We've got college kids who, for the most part, are pretty good. There's a few of you, and you know who you are, that aren't quite that good. But for the most part, you're pretty good. In some of the elementary situations where there's kids that are a little more gritty,
Sure.
What kinds of problems have you seen?
Well, you saw Lauren tonight teach. Lauren just moved from Wichita, Kansas, where she'd been teaching with MIE for about 8 years. She did a calculation on the keyboards, how many times they'd been touched, and she came up with a number that her keyboards had been touched 420,000 times while she was teaching in Wichita, Kansas. In that time period, she replaced 2 headphone jacks and I think 1 broken key. So her failure rate was absolutely ridiculous. The failure rate total for the program has been around 2%, which is dramatically low, and the repair costs have been substantially low. Brian, there's a question of what type of computers. We just want to reiterate, currently it is a Macintosh program. You need a Macintosh, certainly with minimum requirements, 16 mega RAM, maybe 8 mega RAM. Any kind of hard drive that you can buy nowadays is going to be plenty of the size. It'll run on System 7.5, System 7.6, System 8. So you're all set with any of those.
Does there seem to be an optimal classroom arrangement of the keyboards? Do any suggestions for classroom management arrangement come with this technology when you purchase it? Again, during the Institute, a lot of teachers will take and sketch out their room and say, how am I going to arrange all these things? You saw a couple different formations. What a lot of teachers like to do also is to space the keyboards with large space in the center where they can also do movement activities. We didn't see any movement integrated into these activities. In the curriculum, there are movement activities that are part of the instruction. And it's just more of a logistic situation for your students to have them move around and whatever. So there's many ways of organizing the keyboards that you really don't have to go in any one order. It has to do with how your room is arranged, how you like to teach. If you like to have things all in straight lines or more in circles, there's a variety of ways that you can organize your classroom.
Right. You did see a couple of different ways. One of the most common and certainly the most efficient was the setup Lauren had and also Kathy had, which was the perimeter. Being able to get inside and see all the students and walk around using the remote, as well as the outside behind them to assist in perhaps some keyboard skills, is a great way to go. In Shelby's room, where you see them all sitting in that relatively seemed like a pretty small area, which it was, behind those kids in the back row is a whole large activity area where they actually do a lot of different kind of movement in that area. So you weren't able to see that, but it was, it's still there. I have a great question here about how much grant money is available for this particular product, or any product, my guess is. Any suggestions? Yes, I have a lot of suggestions. The grant writing, particularly for this program, has been successful in areas where at-risk students are present. The cooperative learning aspect of this program, peer teaching opportunity, is a tremendously strong component to be able to present to people. My favorite quote is that there's success for any student regardless of level of proficiency. You can access your entire student body with this program. To me, that's a pretty strong, strong selling point to my administration in terms of grants. Any other grants that you can think of at this time? I have one idea that I need to tell you. Well, no, go ahead. We're going to wait. No, I'm not going to do that one.
I'll ask this question to you because you do a lot of traveling and a lot of moving around the country here in terms of talking to different teachers. Do you think the acceptance of the national music standards at the state level can be used by teachers as leverage for increased funding, technology related, at the state and at the local level?
Yeah, I think you can use them, certainly. I think they can be used based on the sheer power. If you take a look at those standards and you outline those for any administrator, and then you can relate what those standards can do outside the classroom. One of the great things that we've seen, I start calling MIE classrooms, MIE schools, because a lot of the techniques that go on in that, a lot of the things or the ways they learn transcend the entire school. They're everywhere. And I think that's a great way to go about getting more funding from administrators, is to talk about, here are the standards, here's how that impacts what we do. And here's what's going to happen with our student body outside of the music classroom. The other part of doing that is supporting the standards as an academic endeavor. This is not an activity. This is not a way for teachers to have a break while someone goes and teaches. This is an academic endeavor. The more you stress that, the more on the same playing field you become with math, science, and English. And finally, I was going to say that if you're not using Rosher and Shaw in your discussions, and you don't know about Rosher and Shaw, you need to go to amc.com and find out more about the Rosher and Shaw report, where the neurologists actually did research showing a tremendous impact in student development based on keyboard instruction as the most important way to do that. Take a look at that stuff. Get on the line. Also, there are a couple places online. You can email me for more information on that. I'll be happy to send that on to you.
Here's a question. Can printers be hooked up to this particular system? The answer is yes. For the purposes primarily of printing out student reports, student records, if we could take a shot of the computer screen, I will show you two areas. There is a complete classroom management portion right here where a teacher can set up classes of students, and each child will be located at a particular seating chart, and you can go to that particular student and have notes typed in. It will also record scores from the various quizzes that are built into the curriculum. Every single module does have a quiz that is integrated in. All of these quizzes are actually given at the keyboard itself, and when a particular question is answered by the students, the actual information will come to the computer screen, and also will come from the through the speakers of the students themselves. Each student will get verbal feedback through their headphones as to how they did. All of those scores from those quizzes can be recorded by the teacher and printed out for later use. Tying that into outcomes, how do you know how your students are doing? That's one way of doing it. The classroom management and the assessment part of it becomes very important, so the printer does become an integral component for the whole system.
And I might add, even if you don't have a printer, you may have the opportunity to drop down all of that information onto a disk and then be able to take that to a computer lab or another place, or take it home and go ahead and output those grades at home. So there's a very flexible way to do that. Another question from Susquehanna University about the price. I'll just repeat this once more. I don't want to get too involved with that price. She has an old brochure here. I will tell you that the new price effective January 1st is $12,900 for the complete system, including training and everything else. No Ginsu knives this week. Thanks.
This is a question: can MIE be used in conjunction with other programs like, Finale, Band of the Box, other types of notation software packages? The integrative nature of the curriculum would allow you to do that. We don't have any of that integrated into the curriculum per se. Any of the materials that you need from a software standpoint are already there. Apart from using the keyboards for music and education, you certainly could place any of that kind of software on the teacher computer, or the one computer in the classroom, and then you could certainly use the teacher keyboard to do any kind of note entry for notation, any of those kinds of activities. We've had a number of teachers that have wanted their students to notate their own original pieces, and they might come in at either after school, during lunchtime, especially at the middle level, and we'll actually come up and they get to use the teacher keyboard, and we'll use the different notation packages to enter music and do some things that way. So these are MIDI keyboards. You can do some other kinds of things with them.
Question, is there a way to use the MIE to reinforce an older, i.e. high school level, such as individual practice and other exercises? I believe there is. I always, I get a lot of questions on the road when I'm doing presentations and talking about MIE that, well, the song material, since originally designed as a K through 8 program, is really childish for high school kids, and so we really don't think we can implement this kind of program. First of all, as a general music opportunity, State of New York, for instance, Music in Our Lives opportunity kind of curriculum, this is a great theory-based or general music approach for learning conceptual data. The questions I would ask a high school class would be far different than I would certainly at the elementary level. For instance, I would play Now You Has Jazz, and I would ask them the song form. What key are they in? I would ask where intervals of seconds and thirds did occur. I would talk more theoretically and use the song as a platform as opposed to the experiential process that we use at the younger levels. In terms of practicing after school, I think Brian showed you on the keyboard earlier, we do have an opportunity to go full 5 octaves in a normal mode, and by doing that, students can come in and practice. There's also a new text by Alfred Music called Keyboard Expansions that focuses basic keyboard skills using this particular keyboard. So it's pretty flexible. We've been real happy with the flexibility of that at the high school level.
A question dear to my heart, being a former middle school teacher, frequently junior high and middle school students lose interest in music. If they have been with this particular technology from the kindergarten or primary grades, will they be bored by this by 7th and 8th grade? Very, very early on when I was doing some research work with the use of keyboards, electronic keyboards with students, I expected that to happen. One of my thoughts was that, well, we're going to put keyboards in the classroom in September, and by Thanksgiving time, they'll be collecting dust. We are finding just the opposite occurs. That interest in music, interest in wanting to do these keyboards is maintained, I think, for 2 reasons. One, it's technology. These are technology kids. They just love this stuff. They eat it. They breathe it. Take it to any kind of audio electronics store, and you see how they gravitate to the technology. The second part of it, again, I will come back to that. Each student has their own keyboard. Again, 30 students can be in one classroom. Each has their own instrument. That's critical. Trying to accomplish all the things we're talking about tonight with the standards, with, for example, 3 keyboards for 30 students, I don't think you could really do it. I think you'd have great difficulty. What makes it work is the active participation and the fact that students can do things. The wide variety of music that's available to be used, you can be teaching at any particular level. So we've actually found great success with middle school students especially, just kind of grab onto this.
Absolutely. Question, can the student keyboards be substituted for a failing teacher keyboard? I believe the question, if I have it accurately, is they're asking if the keyboards, student keyboards and teacher keyboard are significantly different. They are identical. All of these keyboards work the same exact way. The way the software talks to them is different, and that would be the difference. I have also another one. Will Yamaha be porting the MIE control software to any other platforms? We don't know yet. We're looking into it. We've been talking. We have no final decision. If we do, we will certainly advertise that to everybody who is interested. Secondly, on that same question, will MIE control software be ported to Apple Rhapsody's OS in the next year? We are seated as a developer. We do get all that information, and as soon as it's completely possible for us to do that, we have made the steps up with every operating system, and it's our plan to continue doing so.
This is a question that also would refer to, I think, working with students that are mainstreamed in your classroom, and a lot of teachers have this as an issue of how do you integrate those types of students and what kind of activities might you do. Can I buy a voice box or voice speech producer to use to sing into my computer? Also, how do I use this kind of technology with students with special needs? In terms of a voice box or voice speech producer, if I'm reading this question correctly, that ability to take your voice and, for example, project it over the entire system, would it be possible to additionally get some kind of a microphone connection where you could actually plug into the mixer box that's right here, and then you could have that amplified through the students' headphones. We have a number of students that have hearing impaired situations, and they've been able to work with the music teacher to have that additional reinforcement. In terms of students that are included in your classroom because of a variety of specialities, we've found great success. One of the terrific things I think about electronic keyboards, especially with students with physical limitations, is how easy it is to produce musical sound. It doesn't take a whole lot of effort to at least get a sound. So that's been very, very successful. In fact, one of our pilot programs very early on was in kind of a magnet school for students with special physical needs, and it was really quite exciting to see the types of things that the students were able to do. That's a real quick answer to that. We spent quite a bit of time during the Teacher Institute talking about those kinds of issues, inclusion, mainstreaming, those kinds of things become very important.
Absolutely. The ability for musical advancement seems limited with such an abbreviated keyboard. Is the performance of music important in the overall curriculum designed for this system? Performance is not the principal outcome. Performance of music could be a number of different ways. These people could be moving and performing to music. Could be very kinesthetic. They could be singing and performing to music. I think sometimes we focus entirely too much on the keyboard as being the outcome of performance. Performance takes a number of different turns through your class, and you want to make sure you can support that. Now, as we've showed with the keyboard, if you have students who show particular keyboard proficiency and you want to support that, certainly there's music out there by Alfred, as I mentioned earlier. This keyboard does go to normal mode, so there's a full 5-octave opportunity. You would be certainly taking opportunities to support that student in their endeavor to learn to play. But I think performance is a very general statement. It is not something where you're going to hear every student in this class play a perfect B-flat scale at 120 right on the mark. That's not the goal. As I said earlier, we want them to see it, hear it, and identify it and create with it. We can do that. We're very successful. The fact that they can play it down the road is even a bigger plus for us.
This is a question that says, how are composing and improvising defined in your program? We had a hard time telling the difference between the two in the lessons that we saw, which covered both. In the standards we talk about improvising, we talk about composing, and that's kind of a important operational definition to make. For the purposes of this curriculum, let me just take it this way. Improvising has that nature that you're creating the music on the fly, usually against some kind of a rhythmic or stylistic background, and you are evaluating it after the fact, but that student might not be able to recreate that the very next moment. I improvise something, or I have a child do it, and if that child can't do it right back, that might be okay. Composing we look at as more of a more detailed problem solving, and one way we get at that, we talked about, and I'll go to the screen here again, we talked about that there is a section of the screen called the original songbook, and in that teachers and students in fact would have the ability to create their own songs and actually save them on the computer. So one of the things we encourage teachers to do during the training time is let students initially improvise. Let them try some ideas, test them out, don't like that, try something else. If that student can take that idea and recreate it, I think they're composing. And a lot of times what we found, especially with middle school kids, is say, you got your piece composed, Mike? Great. Come on up here now, play that same piece on my teacher keyboard, and I'll save it on the computer. And a lot of teachers are using that in the portfolio assessment notion. Absolutely.
You can also record those pieces that they create by using the headphone jack as a record out to a cassette player and having a great opportunity to do that. How are students assessed? We did cover this very, very briefly. I'll do this quickly again. What are the criteria for student success or student progress in this curriculum? In fact, in every module there is a quiz. The quiz does cover certainly what's covered in that module in a very engaging way. In fact, many students come in asking, today a quiz day, we want to take a quiz. That's because of the interaction between the computer, the yes, no, right, wrong, true, false kind of statements that the computer will respond to their answers. What we want to assess is whether or not they can understand both orally and cognitively what goes on with this concept. And we will ask questions from, for instance, the C penachord is module 17. We'll ask in the C penachord to enter the first note of the penachord, the third note, the last note, the second note, the fourth note. Those are the first 5 questions. The last 5 questions are, listen to this example and tell me if C penachord is being used. So we want to make sure they understand both cognitively and orally what goes on with that. The great thing at the end of each quiz is that you tell the students right through the computer how many right out of how many questions you asked. And finally to that is you can post those into the student record book and they are printable. You have a real benchmark now of every point point through that curriculum for them to be able to look back and say where they were successful. You also have a great way on the test screen. You want to show the test screen very quickly to assess your class's overall success. And you can see that. Can you do one of the examples,
Sure.
just a quiz? He's going to do one quick question. And on the right side, as we see the assessment, certainly we only have one student keyboard, so we have one keyboard answering there. Currently, those are 2 incorrect responses. You can see that right above number 1. If Brian would run his cursor over number 1, you'll also see that the name of the students appear just above that. So now he knows who he has to talk to, and he can do that through automatic feedback, again, through the software to send additional messages out and assess their progress, even in the quiz. On the very top, there's a bar that shows the percentage of the class that got the question correct and the percentage that did not get it correct, and also tells us how many, to the right side, that everybody is accounted for. And there's a running tally continually that shows how many correct, how many did not respond. It's extremely detailed, and you become quite the diagnostician in this process. You diagnose their process and their success. Some of the questions that are answered really wrong gives you a great chance to go back and reteach that. So there's a great way to assess what they go on. In terms of our standards, as I said, both cognitive and oral understanding of each of those particular concepts.
Let me add one comment with that, with the assessment. There's also a facility built into the software to help you, the teacher, assess curricularly where you're at. Let me just pull up on the screen the electronic lesson book. All of the modules are available on print copy, of course, but they've also been reproduced on the computer. And I'm clicking on what's called the lesson book, and I will go ahead and let me just pick a module that's kind of later on. Let's do one on syncopation. And you'll see on the left-hand side of the screen is the major concept or major activity for that particular lesson. On the right-hand side of the screen is the text that guides you, the teacher, what you're supposed to be doing. The point I want to make is at the bottom right-hand of each of these activities, there's a little checkbox. If I click on that, what happens right now is that posted on the class that I have in front of me for the day, I can go to the progress report and I can tell that this particular class on today, Thursday, finished Activity 2, Module 62. So you, the teacher, are able to use the computer to help you in your tracking. You can find out from an assessment standpoint where you're at with your students.
There was another question. I think we've covered this, but I really want to stress this again. Do lesson plans include any movement, activity, or do students stay seated the whole time? Boy, let's hope they don't stay seated the whole time. You did see some of that today. At the 7th grade level, certainly the tendency to stay seated, since movement and kinesthetic motion is not really what we're working with at that level, is going to be less. But early on, there are tremendous opportunities. In fact, for instance, Module 12. In Module 12, where it is the legato and staccato is the concept, the Ghost of John is the song that they're studying for that. There are movement activities to discuss moving legato motions and staccato motions to the song. And that's something that happens in every particular module. In fact, it's usually the second activity that they go through. They sing and they move. As they go through the model, I might add, of a listen, discuss, make, and create model, where they're going to listen to music in every module, make music in every module, discuss, and create in every module.
How might the system be used to enhance ensemble rehearsal? And this person is asking specific in the area, for example, of sight reading and composition. First of all, what are you doing in the ensemble rehearsal? And I think it's great that you're trying to tie in sight reading, trying to tie in composition, improvisation in the medium of the ensemble rehearsal. I've seen a number of teachers that are moving towards using MIDI keyboards in a situation similar to this to help the students acquire basic music reading skills, basic performance and singing skills that they then transfer to the instrumental or the choral setting. And I know that Lauren has talked about with her young students that by the end of the year, she's had literally 100% of her students matching pitch, which certainly helps out the ensemble situations. We've also seen in some states increases in enrollments in beginning band and beginning orchestra because these students come out of a high participatory curriculum like this and want to continue participating in music. And that's always been one of the strong suits of music at the secondary level in this country, is our high performance level and the ability to get students actively playing. So I think there's some really terrific terrific transfer things. What I find fascinating is the number of teachers that are coming to our training for music and education that are doing not just quote-unquote general music, but also have a choir, have a band, have an orchestra. Kathy Punwar, the last individual you saw on the tape, is a wonderful orchestra teacher, strings teacher, and also has a chorus at Senate in addition to teaching with music and education.
Right. I think in the surveys we've done, we found that there's been as much as a 29% increase in band and orchestra participation once this program is in place. And I think one of the successes to that is that there's so much success because we're not putting pressures on to learn, to perform at that level. We are purely learning concepts and applying those concepts and creating. The feeling of the positive feeling they have is so overwhelming that they do have a tendency to want to stay in the program. Attrition is very low. Is your intent to replace the traditional general music classroom, rhythm instruments, body percussion, movement with the keyboard? Focus, quote, on this, quote, new technology. Certainly not. One of the beauties, I think, of this system, and it's a creativity point with the teacher, I might add, is to incorporate as many different styles, as many different kinds of instruments and opportunities for the students. I might add, though, that in research that we did early on in this program, national research, we found that the average time in a traditional, I'll use the word that you've used, a traditional classroom, general music classroom, the average time a student got to touch an instrument was once every 6 weeks. That's the traditional card on top. Your name is on top when you play the orff instrument. Since I only have 3, it goes to the bottom, and the next person plays. My guess is a passive opportunity as opposed to an active opportunity. Certainly, the active opportunity becomes a better opportunity. But please, don't put everything away. This is another step. This is an incorporation of everything you have. Use everything in your disposal to teach music. Everything.
Technology has also become kind of a way of life for a lot of people. Ask the same question. How many of you are still using phonograph records at home? If you are using it kind of as a hobbyist situation, the technology replaces that. So we have to have the technology that forces us to move on with some new techniques.
There was a question about, do you have to be certified to teach this program, or can you, if you have this program, can you train other teachers? Absolutely. There is no requirement to have our training, but we'd like to have you to come to the facility if you'd like, but you certainly have no requirement. Your understanding of the program will be far better, and I'm certainly sure that the result in terms of using the technology will be much more efficient, and you'll spend less time on the tech support line. Well, that's all the questions we could get to tonight. Any question that we did not answer, we will certainly respond to you via email, or if you left us a phone number, we will call you back. We want to make sure every question receives a proper answer. We were overwhelmed by the response, and we thank you very much for all of the questions. And we thank you for joining us. It's been a pleasure working with MENC and the University of Nebraska ETV and the School of Music on this project. If you have additional questions regarding music and education, please call us in Grand Rapids at 800-253-8490. That is an Eastern Standard Time number. Or you can contact me via email at mskinner@yamaha.com. For all the people at MENC, the University of Nebraska, and Yamaha Corporation, thanks for watching, and good night. MENC is 70,000 educators working to ensure that every student has access to a well-balanced, comprehensive, and high-quality music program of music instruction. For more information, contact MENC on the web at www.menc.org.